So a woman in San Antonio, Texas, was arrested and is being accused of intentionally and knowingly aiding her middle school son's plans for mass violence and for purchasing him a rifle, ammunition, and tactical gear. This child is 13 years old. 13. My God. So I have a couple of articles that give some facts on the situation, and then afterward, I'll give my thoughts on it. I'll just read the main point straight from the article. It says, warning signs that a San Antonio middle school student had deadly intentions had been building for months, police say. They took on a new urgency Sunday when his grandmother walked into his bedroom. There she found rifle and pistol magazines loaded with live ammunition and a homemade explosive, according to a court document. The following morning, while the boy's mother took him to school, the grandmother called the police. So the mother, Ashley Pardo, 33 years old, was arrested on Monday and charged with aiding in the commission of terrorism. Authorities allege she provided her son with ammunition and tactical gear as payment for babysitting his younger siblings. Pardo bought the materials, the gun, ammunition, all that, despite being aware of her son's obsession with violence, according to Bexar County arrest affidavit. The affidavit alleges that Pardo intentionally and knowingly aided her son. As of right now, they haven't released the name of the boy yet, the 13-year-old whose mother bought him the ammo and the gun and the tactical gear. But as I'll get to in a moment, he actually was planning on shooting up his local middle school. I'll get to that in a second. The article goes on to say, the boy went to school on May 12 wearing a mask, camouflage jacket, and tactical pants, then left shortly afterwards, according to the affidavit. When authorities couldn't locate him, school officials feared he might return to carry out an attack. The student was later detained off campus and charged with a crime, Jeremiah Rhodes Middle School said in a Monday letter to parents. Another article, this one by CBS, said, the situation unfolded in January when school staff at Jeremiah Rhodes Middle School in San Antonio found a map of the school which had allegedly been drawn by Pardo's 13-year-old son. The map was labeled Suicide Route, with the name of the school and a rifle drawn above it, according to the affidavit. The boy told officials that he had a fascination with past mass shooters, including their manifestos. The article goes on to say, San Antonio police said Thursday that CPS, Child Protective Services, became involved with the family after the drawing was found. Well, I fucking hope so. In April, the boy was suspended from school for using a school-issued computer to research the 2019 massacre on 2 mosques in Christchurch, New Zealand. The boy was suspended and then later in the day attempted suicide. He attended an alternative school through May 7 and then returned to Jeremiah Rhodes Middle School on May 8. They let him return after he was suspended for looking up and researching how to basically pull off a mass shooting. On Monday, the boy's grandmother contacted police after the middle schooler told her that his mom gave him guns and ammunition, according to the affidavit. The grandmother told the police that Pardo, the mother, had taken her son to a surplus store and bought him tactical gear, including magazines, a tactical vest, a tactical helmet. Jesus Christ. The grandmother also found a homemade explosive device made from a mortar-style firework in the boy's bedroom. Written on the device were the words, for Brenton Tarrant, the Australian white supremacist who carried out the Christchurch shootings that killed 51 people. So allegedly on the device that he created, on that device he wrote, for Brenton Tarrant, who is, like I just said, he was the white supremacist who carried out the mass shooting that killed 51 people in mosques. The crazy part about this whole story is that this boy probably would have carried out this mass shooting if not for his grandmother, who called the police after she was concerned for him after he had left for school with homicidal energy. So just to recap the time of events here, and it's mind-boggling to me that this boy even got this far. So let me explain. NBC wrote an article and it says, the boy first came to police attention after he drew disturbing, violent images of his school and, quote, expressed a fascination with mass shootings, end quote, in January. After that, police continuously met with him and his family, offering resources and services. Months later, the boy was suspended while researching mass shootings on a school-issued computer, like we just covered. And then the day of his suspension, he attempted suicide. And then he attended an alternative school amid his suspension. And after all of that, Rhodes Middle School allowed him to come back. Allegedly, the school increased security and police continued to maintain contact with the family. And then, according to the grandmother, She learned from the boy that his mom had been taking him to military surplus stores, purchasing military clothing, including a tactical helmet, tactical vest, and various handguns and rifles and magazines, allegedly in exchange for babysitting his younger siblings. The grandmother then went through the child's room and found the magazines loaded with ammunition, found an improvised explosive device, like I stated earlier, and a note on the kitchen table with references to mass shootings, terror attacks, white supremacy, and Nazism, according to the affidavit. After that whole timeline there, this boy was still able to go to the middle school, fully dressed in tactical gear. You know, the article doesn't say if he had brought his guns with him. I don't know that yet. The fact that the whole timeline had elapsed and he was still able to get into the middle school that he was once suspended from for researching on the school computers about mass shootings. That's diabolical. I have no words for how stupid that is. But the mother had allegedly, bought him all this gear, bought him the guns and the ammunition, while knowing, obviously she knew about his problems, about his fixation on, mass shootings, and he got suspended earlier in the year for it. So the fact that his mom still bought him that gear and the guns and all of that, that's why she got arrested. She got arrested for aiding him in his terrorism. According to the affidavit, Pardo, the mom, had been contacted previously by police. Like I said, the police had been in contact with the mother for months, but, quote, she appeared to be dismissive and unconcerned with her son's behavior, end quote. And according to New York Times, the San Antonio police chief, William McManus, said that the charges against the boy and his mother, so they're both being charged, were based on the simple fact that the young man was apparently planning some act of violence based on the things that we found out he was doing, and that the mother was assisting him. Look, I don't want to say this, but I think I have to. Texas is fertile for mass shootings. I think that might be obvious to you, right? You remember a couple of years ago what happened in Uvalde, Texas. Dozens of students, and including several teachers, were gunned down and massacred. I remember following that story pretty closely a few years ago, and I remember how ineffective the police's response was to it, and that the Uvalde police were hung out to dry online. They were getting bashed by the media, by everyday people. Their response to the event was pathetic. And if you remember, they released the camera footage of inside the school. The police were like hesitant to actually go and respond to the shooter. They were like looking around the corner. They were, they didn't go for it. And that likely caused several more students to be shot. That was a very tragic situation. And I remember, and I was very pleased with how mainstream media covered that story. It was everywhere. It was huge. So I thought, man, things are going to change. Gun reform broadly in the United States is going to be talked about more now. Who knows? Texas is never going to touch gun laws, let's be honest. But the conversation was being had again. I feel like every time there's a mass shooting, this happens, right? There's, it blows up in the media, people are talking about it, and then the conversation around gun reform finally gets the light that it deserves. But even though this situation could have ended much worse, right? Like the boy was detained before he was able to carry out the mass shooting. The problem is, it may have happened if not for his grandma calling the police. If his grandma never walked into his room and found the guns and the ammunition and the note that he left for school, and he left a note on the counter that said, "I'm going to be famous." If the grandmother wasn't there to see that, who knows what would have happened? Dozens may have been gunned down, massacred. That's the problem, is that if not for the grandma, it may have happened. There was no structure in place to prevent him from doing it. CPS was involved. The police maintained contact with the family. Obviously, it didn't do anything because he ended up still getting the tactical gear. His mom helped him buy the guns and the ammunition and all that. And it was almost carried out. After the school, the community, the police, they were all made aware that this kid was potentially genocidal, really. So I guess my final thoughts is that this is going to continue to happen more. Unfortunately. Obviously, I don't want that to happen. But this is going to continue to be more prevalent, especially in Texas, as they have the most lax gun laws in the entire country. The laws are so lax in Texas. Anyone can get a hold of any type of weapon that they want. The mother was able to find a way to buy her 13-year-old son a rifle, pistol, ammunition, magazines, tactical gear. This may have been prevented. Like, obviously, like I said, the kid didn't carry it out, thank God. But this whole situation could have been prevented if we had gun laws like Japan has, if we had gun laws like Australia has, or any of the Scandinavian countries, where they do allow you to have guns. Don't get it twisted. There's a misconception on the right that those countries, those socialists or those social democratic countries, ban guns. That's not true. Any responsible person can get a gun in those countries. You just have to go through hurdles. You have to go through an extensive background check, which I think is pretty fucking common sense. If you're going to buy something that can kill 20 people within 5 seconds, I think you should have to go through a background check. I'm sorry. And not only do they have to go through background checks, they have to go through training, gun safety, by a licensed professional, and not by any random person like your Uncle John who runs a hunter safety class, out of his pole barn every third Thursday. It's just like, I am not by any means anti-Second Amendment. I think anyone who is responsible, safe, who doesn't have a violent criminal history, who passes a mental health examination, should be able to get certain firearms. Now, of course, there's firearms I think should be banned from public use. Automatic, I don't think most people can even get their hands on automatic weapons, but semi-automatic rifles are easily accessible to the general public. Virtually anyone in Texas can go to their local gun shop and buy an AR-15 without an extensive background check, without a mental health examination. In Texas, to buy firearms from licensed dealers, you have to be 21 to buy a handgun, 18 for rifles and shotguns, and there are no age restrictions for private sales of firearms who are 18 and older. The 21 years old to buy a handgun doesn't apply if it's a private sale. And like I said, there's virtually no gun laws. There's almost no safeguards in Texas. If you talk to most progressives, and I would go as far as to say maybe even 99% of progressives are not anti-Second Amendment. They support regulation on guns that ensures safe, responsible people own guns. Hunters, people who do it for sport. There's millions of hunters in this country. Many of them use shotguns, use rifles to kill deer, turkey, whatever it is. I want them to be able to do that. I grew up in a hunting family. Now, I didn't hunt very much myself. I went out a few times. It wasn't my thing. And I get it. My family still does it. I'm totally immersed in the hunting culture. Like, I get it. But is it too much to ask for these people, anyone who wants to own a firearm, to go through an examination to make sure that you're not mentally unstable, to go through a background check to make sure you don't have violent criminal history, and then have to go through a quick course on gun safety? Just a few simple steps. And then, of course, red flag laws. Just like this kid in San Antonio. As soon as the kid was found by the police in January to have been fixated on mass shootings and potentially homicidal, his whole family should have got red flagged. I'm sure most of you know what that is, but essentially a red flag law, it gives law enforcement the ability to confiscate guns or to prevent the sale of guns to someone who is exhibiting a red flag. Like if they're mentally unstable, if they're having suicidal or homicidal ideation, and the police know about this, they can enforce the red flag law and to make sure that the kid or anyone in that family is not able to purchase a firearm that homicidal or that mentally unstable person can potentially use in the future to kill people. I'm in support of red flag laws. Now, there's different types of red flag laws. There's different levels of how strict they go and how lenient they are, and we can debate how strict to get. Should the red flag be enforced just on the person or on someone living in the household, or if a family member is homicidal and the police know about it, then everyone in the family can get their guns confiscated. I don't know about that, but what I do know is that we need red flag laws. We need universal background checks. We need people to have to pass a mental stability or some sort of mental health examination, just like Japan has. Look it up. It's actually a pretty good system that they have. It's really not that crazy at all to ask that responsible and safe people own guns. If you look at the statistics from other developed nations like Australia, the United Kingdom, Western Europe, all the Scandinavian countries and more, if you look at the stats of mass shootings and gun violence, from before and after they tightened gun laws. There is a clear correlation that proves that after tighter gun laws, so universal background checks, red flag laws, banning bump stocks, banning, there's a whole bunch of other things, that gun violence went down. Mass shootings became a fraction of what they were. Australia is a great example. You can still have a gun in Australia. You have to go through a background check. You have to jump through a few hurdles, but you get your gun, you get to do whatever you want with it, right? It's made sure that that person is responsible and safe. That's pretty much all I've got to say about this. Like I said, I'm not anti-Second Amendment. I think people should be able to own firearms. And I'm empathetic to the culture because I grew up in it and I know it. But we need to adopt some real gun reform akin to what Australia and Japan have. That wouldn't solve our problems, right? Like, we're still going to have mass shootings here and there. We're still going to have gun violence because that's so baked into poverty and into our culture in many poor communities. But it would drastically lower the number of violence and mass shootings that we have, as evidenced by other countries who have implemented the same or similar laws that I'm proposing.